Okay. Limited time. So mess around with long startup. Let's just get moving. So I'm streaming just because it helps record this. It helps me focus just to kind of talk it through, even if I'm just talking it through to myself. So that's why. Uh, why did you all break? Event receiver. We'll change that eventually, but I'm not sure why that's all busted. But we'll figure that out later. Oh, what did you sure why that all broke, but whatever. Okay. So the issue I have right this second is that as much as I want to believe that the idempotency and data integrity of this piece is not a challenge, it actually is. And I mean that in that the notification is pulling changes. And the idea that I had was that I would publish the notification to the communications channel with all the information it needs to make its decision. It shouldn't have to actually go and gather information. So notifications is going to gather the information it needs to make its notifications. Communications is going to publish it. And the idea would be that the implementation here would be the communications relays enough information to say what type of object it is. And when you click on that, you actually go and pull the object data, and the view will contain the rest, including we'll be putting a nothing's running. We'll be putting a list of changes on the actual view. The problem is that as much as I'd like to say this isn't a challenge from a data perspective, the reality is that I can't guarantee 100% that the data will be there when I get the change. So let's say the tenant management system has had a bit of a bleh, and it's not published events. I've gone through, I've been able to make a change because I'm a valid user. The system has validated me as a user. I've got a role. But now that information hasn't made it to notifications. So when I get a notification saying this thing changed, or rather when I change something in the system, the notification system doesn't know who I am because that user doesn't exist. So it can't pull information about my user. Similarly, if it doesn't have the planning item yet, it can't pull information on the planning item. So there's a lot more complexity here than I really want it to be. And also, I now need some form of queue in here to say, if the information is not ready, hold off a second. So this gets way more complicated. So I'm doing a bit of a stream just to record this, basically. Hey, Si, how you doing? This is going to be tough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this send something. I'm going to make this send. We have the subscription. Yeah, that's the problem. The entity subscription doesn't necessarily matter. Let's get it working because I think there's enough data in here to know this part. Actually, there's not. This will indicate the problem straight away because I don't have this user. Oh, this is so frustrating. Let's Bob. Give it that empty grid. We're gonna validate this piece first. This is a bad change. So here's what's going to happen. If I start this up with the changes receiver, sorry, I hope that wasn't. I didn't have a pause button available, so I hope that wasn't loud on the stream. If that sneeze was heard, my apologies. Okay. So the way this is going to work is we're going to have the transient planning item change receiver, and now we're moving into the realm of this getting really difficult now from a distributed computing perspective because it's going to create more and more challenges for us. The more data dependencies we have, the more systems we break it down into, it's going to create those sorts of problems, and I can't avoid it, and I just have to embrace it and grow with it. It's not the wrong thing to do, it's just going to be a little bit harder to get my head around, so I'm going to have to come up with some techniques for tracking these things. If I take any sort of break, I'm going to lose context. Let's see if that's so I can help you. Okay, so the challenge is when I get a change, I need to go and send that message. So that's the first part we need to do. I need to bring some things up. I decided to do something else before to make sure that goes away. And then CD liquid sky. Didn't do services up console Kafka Mongo papercut RabbitMQ Redis SQL Server. Lot of pieces, lot of pieces. So let's see if all that starts up okay. We need Big App running as well. Don't know why that gets stopped in all that, but it does. Come on. That's not gonna start in the end. That's gonna stop. Just from experience, that's gonna happen. Okay, so let's have a look at the, oh no. Everything's gone. Because of Docker Compose down. Because I explicitly destroy everything. Okay. Okay, so we pivot here a little bit. It's time to create our tools. So we should have, because kind of this went down. Did I lose all my data? No. All my databases are intact. Yeah, all my databases are intact. These have storage. These are mapped to local directories, whereas the Kafka topics are all stored. So let's do this. We don't do that again. Kafka, Docker, Compose. What are these? Volumes. Quick storage. Kafka volume. So, okay, here's how to do it. We go to Kafka, go to our broker, go in here, ls, print working directory, cd, ls. Let's go to etc. Kafka ls. That looks right, doesn't it? So we need to map that directory. So let's go to our Docker Compose for Kafka. And then we need, on the broker, we need a little bit more here. And that would look like this. So we're going to have volumes. So we're going to have data, Kafka. I've got to, at some point, I've got to go through all these and map them. And that would be var lib Kafka data. And then we go to here, do services down Kafka. Let's stop Kafka there. Then we do d dev Docker, d dev data Kafka. Let's see if this creates this. So now, oh, Kafka. Data Kafka. There we go. Okay, it's being created. Okay. So now we go back over here. Topics. Okay, let's add a new topic. Liquid sky dot you shall not move. Create that topic. We should see that created in the other side. Yeah. So what I'm looking to do here is I want to make sure that that topic, which again, I can produce a topic, test 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can produce a message to it, right? So that means we have that. Now, if I go back over here, I do Docker compose, no, use my tool, services, services down Kafka. That will shut it all down again, right? So this should disappear once it removes all its containers. Because what's happened here is I've lost all the messages that I'd actually sent over the last couple of days, and it all reverts back. Now I can't test any of those changes things without actually going creating changes, etc. So I need a kind of reset point. So we may pivot here a little bit to do something a little bit more challenging, which is creating a tool for migrating data from one system to another, which I'm going to need, and I think it's wise to do. So let's just go here, verify this site's down. Yeah. So now we go services up, Kafka, bring them back up. This should be eventually there. Okay. Now we go to topics, and our topic from before, once this system starts up, obviously this is taking the restart cost. That topic that we created should still be there. Nodes, topics. Broker didn't start this time. Broker got stuck. That's why that's taking so long. We're expecting you shall not disappear or whatever. Why are you failing? Please tell me you don't have actual. That's worrying. Broken name of service not known. Broken name of service not known. Oh, that's not good. I wonder if there's some configuration I'm not saving somewhere as well, because if it's not, that's worrying. The other pieces start up, but the broker didn't start up. Let's remove that right a second. Let's bring them down again. Verify the startup without that file there. So the challenge there looks like it is very much to do with this directory already existing. And all these existing, so all these are the topics, right? So all the different file systems. I know that I've wiped that out. Okay, so I'm doing that so that I can actually go in here and connect to the actual broker. See, that's healthier. If we start that now, go to topics. it's creating all the tables. Case equal processing log because case equal DB started up. Yeah, there we go. Exec ls. So we had cd while lib Kafka ls cd data ls. So that was okay. etc Kafka ls. So I wonder if we need to store the state and the actual. I wonder if this is necessary, but these are just properties files. Oh, but hold on. There's cat connect. There make a. So my thought is that maybe there's another directory that those files have to align to that this prevents from. Where else would there be? Been that's the tooling. That's okay. That's so. I think that'll be it. Unless there's anything opt. No. So if we do the directory again, that's data. Let's do data directory, data Kafka configuration bar etc Kafka. Yeah, that's that one. Read write. I mean, I don't need write access to them from the. I think that's what the host can do. I don't need to be able to write to those directories from the host. I just need them to yeah. So let's do Docker compose and I want to do it. So the reason I've done it this way through this script is because I want a Docker compose file so that I can just copy and paste. I can copy the Docker compose file out independently of the actual application stack. There's some configuration, but the data directory is set as an environment variable when I start the Docker piece. So this is passed into it. So I can move things around and whatnot. So that's why. So I can actually make it configurable where I say, okay, do it for demo, do it for, and have different environments start up, all the same tooling. So everything else looks to the application stack, everything looks transparent. But I can actually have a dev and a demo configured completely differently and have the entire thing just switched out. Okay, so that should have created oh yeah, there we go. Now let's see what it creates. Oh, failed to create shim task. Data configuration. Read only file system. Okay, so let's bring that down again. Save. Oh, let's see if that works. What's healthier? Okay, those are there. I think it creates these secrets, and I think those don't align or something after it's created all its topics. I wonder if that's it. So they're all there. Create our topic. Liquid sky dot sample topic. We go in here, produce a topic, test 234, produce our message. So we got our message in there. Now, if we go back here, so if we just check in this directory first, we should have a topic for that thing. Sample topic 0. So they only created one partition. These have many partitions, I think. Doesn't look like a lot of files, does it? Let's move out of that directory. Let's do docker compose down. I want to do it again. Services down Kafka. Um, I mean, it could be that I'm not saving other components, right? Because the zookeeper's there, everything else is there. It could be that I'm not actually saving other things, I suppose. Let's see if this starts. If it doesn't, we're going to have to dig a little deeper. Nope. So I wonder if the zookeeper is the same thing. Zookeeper needs. The problem is zookeeper is annoying because zookeeper doesn't actually need anything anymore. It's not really. CD, etc, Kafka. Yeah. What? Oh, whatever. CD bar. CD. There's no Kafka in there. So there's a Kafka broker in here. The log for J properties. Zookeeper properties. Cat. I mean, that clearly won't start up, right? This is having an issue. It's not. The broker's trying to join the wrong cluster. So something's out of whack there, right? So let's assume that if we go back over here and do. See, I don't like this because it just. Here I'm like excited. Just feels like I'm just chasing So let's do data directory, data, Kafka, Zookeeper, data. I've got a lot of datas in there. var lib, Zookeeper, data, read write. I'll read write. And then let's just mimic that. And that, because that's just log. And that's just log. Just so we can see if there's any problems there. Because, I mean, the broker and Zookeeper should be all that's required. There should be nothing else. Everything else kind of plays off of the Zookeeper and the broker, so I don't see any reason why this wouldn't. So, got services down, Kafka. Let's bring them down. I'm gonna go wipe out this configuration. And then do services. Oh, Kafka. So we're going to pivot a little bit off of this because there is some of the missing pieces that, and I actually only need one record, but I'm going to pivot to building the tool now because I think that it's an important piece to build, and I don't see any other way around it. But it does give me a lot of flexibility in the future for repairing the system when I'm building extra pieces, and I'm procrastinating because I don't want to do the piece that is hard here. Okay, so that's working. So we can go here. We don't have our topic, but let's create a topic. Liquid's guide on sample topic. Into that sample topic. Let's produce a message to it. Test. Oh, doesn't matter what I put there. So as always, if anybody has any questions about what I'm doing, if you think I'm doing something crazy, that's also or being unnecessarily wasteful, let me know. Trying to stumble my way around this little bit of learning here. Earlier on, I tried playing with Kubernetes, and I just got lost in the documentation, so I gave up and came back to coding, and then got stuck in coding because I hit a chicken and egg problem. It just seems to be that kind of day today. Okay, I'll see if this ups. I'm hoping. Oh, that's looking healthy. Yeah. It's still starting, but it was looking healthier. There you go. Our message still be there. Nice. So what we now have is the ability to shut down Kafka and start Kafka back up and maintain its queue state between restarts, which does give me some flexibility. If I'm switching between projects or whatever, I don't have to worry about losing those things. Xcoding, hello, how you doing? So that is volumes to and Zookeeper. Config. So the code before sleep. How are you? Doing good. Bit of a odd stream today because I was started with the idea of doing one thing and then realized I need to do a different thing. So we're going to pivot slightly. I was just fixing Kafka because I've just lost all the Kafka messages I've created over the last couple of days. Because does this actually still work? Don't know what this does. I was installing tools today. So yeah, we're just making sure that that maintains its state when it restarts, so we can keep hold of Kafka. Looks like that's what it required. Interesting. Okay. So I'm going to create a new tool, new solution, console app right now. Do it as a learning stream. So what I need to do is I need to build a tool that can populate a new system. So let's say I bring up a new database. I need to have planning items. I need to have users, etc., just like notifications. And most of that data has been lost in past messages, right? I need the state of that system to start in line with the rest of the system. I can't have it where it needs to have messages to catch up, because if I had a new system 6 months after I've created the system, hundreds of thousands of messages will have passed through the system by that point. And if I use the word system in here anymore, I'm going to drive myself crazy. But the point is, the number of messages that have gone through the platform is not worth trying to recreate, right? I don't want to generate that much noise again, because if I've added attachments, if I've added planning items, if I've added tenant management, all these things need to produce data, and I might need bits of each part. So I might need users from tenant management. I might need planning item details from planning items. I might need, titles from documents and attachments, right? If I upload an attachment and that's a change, right? Ultimately it could be, then I want to be able to say, oh, this attachment was added by this user to this planning item, etc., or whatever it is. So I need the way to bring an individual database up to speed with the rest of the system without republishing all the messages, because it's a lie to republish the messages, right? Just pushing the integration does not mean the system is valid. So right now, I'm using SQL heavily. This is only a real problem for SQL. Right, the second I can use, I will need the changes. But I need a tool to basically say, from this database, query these pieces of data, transform them, and insert them. Right. I need a pattern to do that, so I don't end up with. So I can just write a script that is, here's how to transform this data, and then. And this is not a temporary program. This is not a development program. This is a necessary tool as part of the entire ecosystem, because ultimately, when I go live with this product, right, certain pieces of the system are essentially disposable. If they're a little fragile, if they need wiping out because the data in them is a little bit out of whack or whatever, I don't need a backup of every single component of every single piece of the system, right? The core tables, planning, attachments, tenant management, they need to be backed up. They need to be covered. Maybe the core tables in each piece, the communications table to say, I did communicate things, is necessary, but it doesn't need all the supporting data. And same for notifications. So I'm going to create a tool that allows me to specify a source system, a destination system, connection strings, and then a list of tables and mappings. So we need to create some sort of DSL for that. And I mean, it's basically ETL, extract, transform, load, right? Because I'm going to pull it from one system and plot it out into a different system. So we're going to call it, we're going to do learning streams here because I've never done this sort of thing to be dynamic, but I need it to be a little bit more configurable. So we're going to build a first version in here and make it work. So we need to do, this is going to be liquid, sky, ETL. Sky ETL, got that. It's going to be a CLI because we're going to just run it with a configuration file. For right this second, new window. If anyone's done this sort of thing before, I'm happy to listen to any tales, any woes or any challenges you think I might hit. So I'm going to start at what I want to see, which might seem counterintuitive, but sample script.json. Okay. So the way I see this is that in each system that needs to pull data from other systems, I would need a file that tells it how to pull data. I could then point, do I need a file? Regardless, I need a file per A to B. So if we do source, and this is a connection string, so go to the actual application. I'm very much making this up as I go along because I do want to kind of let the creative juices flow a little bit, right? Interesting. Yeah. So this would be source, right? And in this case, this is nice and easy because it's destination, right? So this is going to be ls notifications is the database we're going to push into. So there's our two connection strings. Now, I don't see me using Entity Framework for this because I think that's too restrictive. I don't want to be building contexts for every single thing. I think something like Dapper is more where I'm going to be at. So pipeline. Nice. How do I want to write this? Let's start with the simplest possible thing. We have planning items, we have notifications, we have tables, planning items. Do we assume the table's there is the first question. Let's assume the table's there. Let's empty this table out. So we have no planning items in there. So we need, let's say the pipeline is an array. And we have Control-Alt-Shift-O. Okay, I'm getting rid of Copilot for that. I don't want it to keep prompting me because I'm trying to think and it's just blurring. It's blurring my thoughts on how to do this. So we're going to need a let's say let's say it was section with a name. Because it's not just going to be one table, right? There's going to be many tables, but planning item is where I'm going to start. Extract planning items to whatever. So let's go really easy. From identifier. So what we're going to take is we're going to take. Now, the one thing I'm doing here is risking reinventing a wheel. There might be tools that are known for doing this sort of thing, where I can just point it from database A to database B. But I don't know of any. And I have a very specific case. I don't want to, and I want to have control of that. And I don't think there's going to be too much difficulty involved once they get into the flow. I'll just be able to say, okay, A to B, here's your script. This is where you pull your data from. Because if there's more, if for whatever reason notifications need data from other systems, then there would be more than one script, right? There'd be several as part of the system. So, yeah. Yeah, let's go with that for now. So we've got identifier. We need tenant identifier. Then we need title and description, I think it is. I think that's all we need for right this second. Because the rest doesn't matter for notifications. Identifier, title, description, tenant identifier. And then let's do 2 is in the same order. Identifier, tenant identifier, title, description. That doesn't give us a table. So extract planning items name. We need to be a little cleverer there, don't we? So source. I mean, they don't always have to be the same table either. So planning items. Actually, do I write that a little cleaner? Source is table. Planning items. Fields is that. Then destination is table. And then fields. How does that feel? So we're going to take from here and map. Now that's going to be an ordering thing, so that's going to be challenging to make sure of. So a mapping style might be a little simpler, like a dictionary of some form. Again, this doesn't allow for things like, oh, well, the data gets transformed or it gets changed or it gets calculated or whatever. So there's a bit more difficulty there. Let's go ahead and create an object that looks like that. So we need to do, first we need a step. And a step is a public string name. A public, we have public string. Yeah, I like that pattern because it does mean that they are generic. So there's a public class. Let's go with target right a second. That's a public string table. Public enumerable a string. Fields. So then we have public target source, target destination. Again, if you've done this sort of stuff, I'd be more than interested to know if you've found any pitfalls in doing this sort of thing. Okay, so we have a table. That's that. So we have a step. We then have a public class. Transform by transform definition. Public string source. String destination. No, I'm not going to overthink that right a second. I was about to really kind of pivot on that. Then we have an enumerable step. That's the pipeline, which is probably polling name. Get that again. No overthinking. So now our program, we're going to need Dapper. Dapper. Microsoft. Data.SQL client. I believe I need. So this is going to be one of the challenges here is ultimately I'm going to end up in a world where I actually need this to create objects in other systems as well, rather not just SQL to SQL. If I use SQL to Mongo or Mongo to SQL or whatever, then this tool it will be built upon. And again, the idea of this tool is that you can use it to migrate data. So ultimately, each project will get one of these and it'll tell it, here's the other. It'll actually work to document to some extent, but it will tell it if you need to be recreated, right? Because let's say the database needs to be wiped out or whatever, here's how to populate that data. Also, if I change a field or I modify something, I can actually reconstruct all this data without actually having to remigrate all the information through integration events and affecting other things. And also you could use this for test data because you could actually store test data in some way and use the same tool. If you thought about that, you could actually use a tool to pull from other sources. So there's lots of different uses. But anyway, that's not going to help me. So public class What would this be? Public class. I think if args 0 return right line must provide a configuration. Seems like I know this is ETL. I know that it is referred to as ETL. All I'm doing is extracting, transforming it, and loading it in. Right now, there's a mapping, but no transform necessarily. But I could actually end up with that transform piece. There's some like smart terms around it, but it just seems like what I'm doing is just going to be very basic. So it feels weird to call it anything like it seems pretentious, I suppose is the right word. Okay. So on the topic of potentially existing, it's like when I have a look and see if there's anything that is out there. I'm not trying to look for inspiration, I'm just trying to find yeah. Tooling with licenses. Yep. Common challenge. So one of the risks. So I have two risks. One of the risks is I design my own. I build my own tooling, and it's just not up to the job, and I need something more complicated. And this tool, realistically, has to be treated like any other production code. So it should be maintained. It should be source controlled. Everything should be good. I gave some advice earlier on about using things that are out there because of the amount of time they take to develop. I'm trying to listen to my own advice to in some respects. Now the challenge is the second one I linked to is paid. The first one is code based, which I don't want to do. Sorry. So you kind of create these runners and then you define your process in um, in code. Kind of steps. So I think in this case, it does make sense for me to kind of have ownership of this because I do end up with the ability to make this tool what I need it for my application stack. I'm just trying to make sure I validate it enough. So even if this takes me a couple of hours to write the basic version, the end version is still going to be way more costly. Okay. Let's look to sorry. So we start off with oh yes, right. Let's do I guess the thing I'm trying to do here is a little bit different in that I'm actually trying to build the tooling as part of my workflow. Public class, let's call it, what is this? Transform builder. Private transform builder, string definition, path, public static transform builder. That doesn't matter. Let's not be too clever. That's gonna be all clever then and start with building it from Fluent style. Bar builder equals new transform builder. Then we give it args 0. So that's going to be that. Public. Does this need to be special? Because ultimately, I'm not trying. I'm just trying to say, hey, you need to build this up, validate it, and then run. Transform loader reader. That changes the behavior of that quite substantially. Public string definition file path. Yeah, what's definition file path? Public. I guess what I'm thinking about here from the design perspective is actually how this is actually going to work. Let's see if I can figure it out. So we're going to do connect to databases. Right. We're going to define. We're going to have to go through each step. Right. Each step's going to have a name, a source, destination, and the source and destination are going to have a target table and fields. And we're going to pull from source. So let's do this. Let's start with, should I guess copied always? And let's do edit configuration. And we're gonna object program arguments is gonna be sample script.json. Right. Let's make sure it loads up first. So var definition equals JSON serializer dot deserialize transform definition args 0. Run that test, see if it works. The new JSON serializer options. That's a casing property name policy equals there you go. So now, what do we do with the definition? So let's do public static transform definition. Let's be cleaner on this API from file path. From file path from file string path. Now let's move those pieces in here. So that's file path. That's okay. So then this becomes var definition equals transform definition dot from file args 0. I'll tidy that up a bit. Definition dot source. Should still work. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now we can load a transform definition file from using JSON. Now we need something to actually do the transform. So that's going to be do we validate it first? I think we do have to validate that there's at least rules in there. So let's have public rule is valid. Not string is nor empty source and not string is nor empty destination and not pipeline. So and pipeline.any or pipeline.all actually. All p goes to p dot name. So not string is no empty p dot name and p dot source is not null and p dot destination is not null. Oh, because they can't be null. Dot. Actually, let's do this. Where all. Let's make the each one should understand what's valid is valid, right? So now we put is valid on here. Public is valid. That's going to be not string dot is nor empty name and not source dot table. No, not. Actually, let's continue that path and not source that is valid and not destination is valid. So we just pass down the problem, right? So public bool is valid. Not string dot is nor empty table and not. This is where this gets a little bit messier. But we can deal with it. And not fields dot and fields dot any. So oh, how do we do that? Oh, interesting. So I've passed down the need for the valid, right? So at the top level, is valid is going to say, okay, well, and I'm not going to throw up messages here. I'm not going to be that complicated right now. This is going to be version 1 of this tool. It's going to need to be able to allow me to define a migration path when I create a new table that comes from an existing system, so I don't have to capture all the events. The worst that happens is the events fire because I've got the topics available, whatever, and the idempotency of the system gets to testing. So the source and destination have to be set, and the pipeline has to be valid. The pipeline is where all of these classes valid. So the source, the name is not null, and the source is valid, and destination is valid. But I also need to do and source dot fields dot count equals destination fields dot count, right? Because if there's one fewer in either one of them, then they're not going to match. They have to be the same number. I can't do any further validation because, again, I'm not validating the actual columns. That's going to be a separate level. So this is basic if definition is valid, not if definition is. There you go. So that's going to check that it's an object and that it's valid. Console.writeline file is valid. Ow, dog. Are you biting? Where's the kisses? There you go. Okay. So we have a valid. No, we don't. We have an invalid file. Console.writeline File is invalid. Again. Hey, hey. Um, so I'm going to assume it's the rules. So it is valid. It's not, they're not null or empty, and all of the pipeline is valid. And for each step, it's not null or empty, and oh, that's valid, and that's valid, and that. That should work now. We got carried away with that knots. File is valid. There we go. That's exact. This is the sort of thing where a unit test would definitely have been a good start here. But again, I'm more interested in getting this working than I am. It's their first version. I'm more interested in making sure this is actually what I want it to do. Okay. That's going to be a little bit different there. Okay, so now I need something to load the to load things up. So let's say, let's move these out. Return to the file, transform definition. As a step, target, transform definition, step, target. It's that. Public class. Let's just call it a loader. It takes a transform definition. Ultimately, if I was doing with SQL, I was dealing with different data sources back and forth. Maybe I do want to create a CSV dump of data so that I can actually reload it in, right? That's what this tool's for. This tool is so that I can create multiple pathways to repopulating my data, right? So let's say I want to load a CSV in, or I want to load other things in there. I create different versions of this that would understand the different data sources. Right now, I'm going to go SQL to SQL. Nuac, thank you very much for the follow. Welcome in. If you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to share. So here, we're going to create a new loader. Var loader equals new loader. Takes a definition. And then loader.load. Run. I might want to do some sort of simulation or validation of the actual data tables as well. So that's going to be a challenge. Nah, I'm not an advanced developer, so everything looks great to me. No worries. If you have any questions, any thoughts at all, that you want to, if you want to ask a question, you're more than welcome to. So the tool I'm building right now is to support this larger project, right? So I have a project that I'm building, referred to as Liquid Sky. And this is a project management tracking planning tool that I am constructing. It is aimed at being helping developers, and it's a quite a large system, a lot of distributed pieces, a lot of movement all over the place. And what I'm building right now is a tool that says, okay, well, this system has a lot of data. I need this data in this system. I'm just building this one now. the messages and events that happened in between haven't, they've gone. I don't have them. So how do I recreate the state on here? So I'm building a tool to allow me to say, okay, from this database, pull all this data and put it into this database, and we're good now. So that's what I'm focused on right this second. Really procrastinating on another problem, but I need to do this tool anyway. So yeah, and I actually hold the opinion as well. If just because you're not an advanced developer doesn't mean you can't have any questions or opinions on what I'm doing. It might look a little alien, and I think um, it's useful for people who are not used to seeing such amounts of code to be able to not feel afraid of asking questions. Anything you can help with? No. If you want to hang around and you want to chat and you want to ask questions, do not worry about diverting me. I'm not panicked about diverting and talking about stuff. If you have any questions yourself on anything, software development, I'm more than happy to chat. So what I'm doing here right now is trying to think about how I want to design this thing, right? Because it's going to be kind of challenging. It actually is. I didn't know about that when the name came to me. Trap Exit is the one that raised that to me. Yeah, it's quite a weird movie as well. He's worried about me ruining the search results for it. But the project is only a code name. Yeah, but that has been raised to me. Um, okay, so this needs a few things, right? Let's public class repository string. We're just gonna test something. Um, let's do this. Let me do that. No, that'd be too easy. Public repository. Let's make that disposable. Yeah. Private IDB connection. So we have two needs. We have a read repository and a write repository. Let's make this our read repository. What I'm trying to do here is I'm just trying to think through the use case. Both new SQL connection string. I'm trying to think through the pieces. There's likelihood is this isn't going to stick around. Dispose. Right, we want to be responsible. We want to get rid of things properly. Yeah, that's fine. I think that'll automatically fail like this read all anyway. So dispose should be good enough there. And then public IEnumerable T entity. I'm getting into ORM territory here. Fetch. So I want to I'm going to learn a bit more about Dapper because I've not used Dapper in a long time. And we may need to get into some sort of buffering. So we read bunches of data from the source, insert it into the remote, and then go back and forth. Because if I just read it all in, let's say I have 200,000 records, and that's a lot of memory to take up, and then I dump it all in, that's a lot of data to dump in. Again, the idea here shouldn't be that it shouldn't affect the source repository. It should just, I mean, affect in terms of changing the data. Let's start simple. We can start simple and build out, right? And then the query. Hey Mojo, how's it going? I am I am took a nap, feeling good. Nice. I'm how do I put it? Tasting a little bit of my own medicine. Oh, really? I'm I'm considering my own advice to you earlier on about certain tools. Um, so I have a need, and right now it's more of procrastination than a direct need, but it is a need nonetheless. To be able to create data in one system based upon another system, right? So back to the infamous diagrams. I have planning items in here. I want to populate planning items here. For whatever reason, this database has been recreated. So my planning items are empty in here, but my planning items exist all in here. I want all this data to populate this table, right? I don't want to be writing queries every time. I need tools. So what I'm trying to build, or thinking to try and build, is my own ETL tools for being able to say, okay, let's pull the data and move it across. Not a big problem. I'd like to define scripts. So I can say, hey, from this source to this destination, you're going to extract this is the name of it. And here you go. Here's the source and the destination. So it should build a query, which would ultimately select identifier, 10 identifier, title, description from planning items, populate that into an anonymous object, and then write them back out. Right? These tools exist. There's tools to do this. Is this something that I need to build? Well, just a brief look around, because this will take a long time. Taking a brief look around, there's a few libraries, etl.net, which looks like it's code driven, which I don't want to write code to do this. I want to be able to say, here's a configuration file, run this process, because this isn't a one-off. It will be used all the time, right? If I'm, again, as I'm building up new systems, I want to be able to define, I need to pull this data from here, this data from here, this data from here. Those configuration files need to be built. If the system gets wiped out, I don't want to have to back up every single copy of every single piece of data I have in the system. If there's a problem with the system, it's not got the right data and it can be recreated, I want the option to be able to say, okay, well, now let's wipe out the database, rebuild the database using the scripts, and repopulate. Right. So this is a tool that will get used an awful lot. So I found a couple. I found ETL.net and ETLBox was another one that I found. And ETLBox is a paid product. But you have recipes and all sorts of other stuff. So ETLBox is clearly not the one I want to go with. Is this a tool that can be generalized for many use cases? I mean, it's a common need. and my use case will be an ongoing one, right? So what I'm writing is a CLI, not an actual ETL. It's part of the ETL thing. But I'm writing as a CLI right the second. The idea being that I'll be able to say, okay, here's the things that need to happen. Maybe it's a validation, maybe it's whatever. I could also use something similar to this to say, okay, go and find missing data, right? So I could populate um, more than just a straight up copy. Sorry, my eyes are. I have a fan in the room. It's kind of blowing up. Out of PC now. Nice. Uh, I'm going to need to start taking on some unpaid interns. there's, there's too much work here. Yeah, that's what I was going to get at. What's that? So the problem here becomes if you're using Dapper, right? So with Dapper, you get extensions. So these are the Dapper extensions. I'd help if I could use it as one learning, two portfolio. Yeah. The challenge there is I intend to make it a paid product. So I'm trying to make sure that I yeah. I have honestly been thinking about that since we talked about it the other day. Yeah. Facebook gave the world React, true. It's easy to work. Hey Tops, like how you doing? It's hard scaling stuff in non-work environment. It's easier at work to hand out tasks for other people. Some people find it a lot harder than yeah. Um yeah, what do I want to do here? So I'm debating the amount of I want to do this. This needs to be built, right? This is a tool that needs to be built for this purpose, right? Now again, ultimately this tool would actually be one that could take A to B as a mapping, because obviously you could go from SQL to Mongo, you could go from Mongo to SQL. There's all sorts of other things that could happen here, because again, you might want to say, okay, well, now I can recreate if I back up certain pieces of the system. So let's say the changes, right? The changes are generated. They might you might want to produce them into there so you can always have a history of the changes. So this might get backed up, but the view gets eradicated. You might want to recreate things. So Mongo to SQL, SQL to Mongo, etc., is a realistic because when you bring changes back, you'd have the snapshot of it, but you might not want to snapshot everything all the time, right? Because otherwise you're just creating a lot of actual duplicate data. You might want to say, okay, well, I can bring the changes back for the known entities, but the planning items themselves, the last version of them, gets pulled out here. So I'm not sure about that. Mr. Jones, good evening. How you doing? So yeah, it's more um, just so this is a need. I have a need, so I need to build it, and I need to get it working. Um, does it prevent me from moving forward? No, not at this point, but it's going to become an ever present need, because I'm going to end up with having to As I bring new components online, as I bring new pieces up to date, I'm going to have to keep running these tools. And yeah, and the reason I came across this today is because I actually restart. I was going to switch up my project, do something a little less brain taxing today, and I stopped and started Docker. And so I've had to make some quick changes to the beginning of the stream to make sure that my Kafka instance actually persists its state. So then when I do Docker compose down now, I don't lose all the topics and stuff. So now it's a little bit more stable. I did get after stream yesterday, I did get a little bit more working on the receivers. The planning, and again, I need to be able to now run the data through the system to get the data to produce it out of the system. So that's why the ETL tool. Thank you for the follow, BDD. Welcome in. So I got this where it's publishing the changes, and then I realized that there's a little bit more involved here that I'm going to need some extra time on. What I want to do, changes were made to I have some, I was mentioning it yesterday, I have some, in other parts of the system, like the view, I have data integrity concerns. So when I receive an item, if I don't have the extra data for the item, I don't panic about it, but I stub out the extra the extra pieces. I refer to them as acquire handlers, so that they basically say, okay, go and give me this ID. So they are responsible for returning an ID. However, they do create the data if it doesn't exist as a kind of placeholder and return you an ID. So they're guaranteeing you an ID for that thing, so that when that thing does get integrated through the system, the information is now populated and the system is eventually consistent. So I started building this out last night, and I was writing the handler for the changes, and I got the data figured out. Then I got here and I started writing this, and I thought, well, hold on. I'm relying upon the fact that the subscriber, right? The subscriber is attached to the users table. So I actually have built, this user table here and this subscription here have a link. So I do need this information. If I don't have that information, I can't produce this message, because now that's a challenge. And the way that might happen is if the tenant management integration against here fails for a reason, or isn't available right now, then a change comes in and a planning item is there. You're going to have half the information, but you might not have part of the user information. There is a potential for that sort of event to occur. So I have to now pause on sending that message until my data is intact. Otherwise, I can't send a valid notification out the system. So that kind of is why I'm doing ETL, because it's a diversion until I can get my head around that. Can I ask what the handler is doing? In this piece, this one is processing the planning item change. So this is receiving a change. So we have a change that's been identified by the system. So we, in another component of the system, it said, okay, well, this object got can't demonstrate the data because the data got wiped out. But another part of the system has said, okay, well, the planning item, the review date changed, or the user assigned to it changed, or the description of it changed, or whatever. This change is now hit this system, and this notification system is responsible for now saying, okay, who cares about this planning item? Let's tell them that this got changed. So this handler specifically, its only job is to get the list of subscriptions and then loop through them, and right now to notify. But ultimately, this needs to be moved out to another component, because I think I'm going to end up with an outbox here of some form, and the outbox is going to be very much, is my data valid? So it's gonna be an outbox that may sit there for a while. So it's not going to do retries like the other outbox messages. It's going to do a validation of its data before it actually tries to send. And then if it's not ready yet, it just holds off again and goes back into a cycle. So there's going to be quite I think, a different design here. Because in this instance, I actually have to wait for the system to be consistent. So for anyone new to the stream, I'm building an agile platform, an agile management platform. So think Jira. I'm building this to be a distributed system right off the bat. There's quite a lot of things going on. This diagram represents the data flow through the system. Overall, the architecture does look a little bit like this right this second. We have a client using Angular going through an API gateway. All writes happen against an API. These components of the system, each one processes its message, stores its data, processes the command coming in, stores its data, and then publishes an integration event to Kafka. Those events are then consumed for the other parts of the system to start reacting. So like the changes that I just mentioned, notifications will listen to events on Kafka, and the view. So there's a GraphQL API here that provides the view, and then the client is using GraphQL there. Notifications right now, the piece I'm talking about here is notifications needs to be able to say, hey, communications, you need to talk, you need to tell this person something happened in the system. And that will have its own GraphQL API the client will subscribe to. It'll still go through the gateway, but that will be standalone. So if you have questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing here, you are more than welcome to share. I am happy to talk about this stuff. Coding is it happens on stream, but it doesn't always have to happen. If there's something I can help you with, if there's something that might help, somebody else, I'm happy to talk. Hi, new here. What are you drawing that into? Looks awesome. So this is Obsidian as the actual wrapper, and this is Excalibur embedded in Obsidian. So I'm using the Excalibur with like sloppiness on the lines to make it look a little bit more sketchy. Just trying to learn Kafka now. This is awesome. Nice. I'd be interested in any lessons you have learned so far on Kafka. I'm not using very much of Kafka right now. I've kind of looked at KSQLDB. I'm not using Kafka connectors right this second to do any of this. Everything is published out through the system in events. So I'm using what I'm terming the integration events. Realistically, they are the snapshot of the data that I'm willing to share with the wider system. This is free to use. Yeah, the tooling. Yeah, this is free to use. Yeah, Obsidian's free, and Excalibur is just a plugin you add in. So yeah. Now let's put onto this by Mojo. I basically just started reading the Kafka the Definitive Guidebook and watching YouTube videos. Nice. So this project is not open source. I have streamed this now this is day 112. So all those videos are on YouTube. So any past content is there. I have built a library around Kafka. There is, because as you start to use Kafka, what you realize is I did not mean to do that. I should have opened that in the different browser. That's because I'm not signed in on that browser. Let's try that again without the flashbang. So my project is in GitHub, but it's private. But I have built a few libraries around pieces that I've shared. So my Kafka extensions library I've built to allow me to configure Kafka in a nicer way. So once you start using, if you're using Kafka with .NET, the Confluent library is nice. Look, gonna watch some of those Blazor video. Come on, nice. Thanks for the look, Mojo. So that I've written some libraries around making it a little easier to get the configuration and stuff of Kafka. So there's things like that that I've built. So if it's sorry, as I choke. Um, Also things like Outbox. Sorry. So if you're producing messages on a distributed system, your clients need to have some form of resilience to the system not being there, right? So if Kafka's not enabled or Kafka's brought down for a minute, you need some way. So this actually has support for the outbots, a SQL Server, and an in-memory one. You don't want to use the in-memory one for anything but testing, but there is a SQL Server outbots and it's set up to configure, and a MongoDB version of it as well, because you start to realize that there's a lot of pieces missing. Yeah. So there is extra library. So as I've gone through this system, and this is always an open extension, an open offer to anybody who's watching the stream. If you see stuff that I'm building that you feel is useful to be shared outside of this product, I'm happy to work on building out some external libraries to make it easier for other people. So there's a few of those things I've built. This isn't perfect. I'm going to learn some lessons along the way. This being one of them, right? I have this need for data integrity, and I cannot produce a notification until I have data integrity. So whereas the other system, the view system, can say, okay, just stub out the data and create the records, because once you start distributing your systems, you have to deal with the actual effects of eventual consistency. This system needs to know, right? So maybe I put this in something else. Maybe I put this in a saga. I'm not entirely sure. There's probably a better no, that's not a vessel for this. But this feels difficult. And my general rule right now is if it feels difficult and a little bit messy, the likelihood is there's a different solution. So I'm just waiting for that different solution to occur right this second, because the only thing I can think of right this second is create an outbox for this, push this in there and validate it, and then keep every now and then check it and say, oh, by the way, is the data, or even react to the other data coming in, right? Yeah, there's a few challenges with this piece. So that's why I have moved to the ETL stuff. You can't do that. I suppose you could do it that way. Just it's messy. So the problem with this is let's do string table name. Um, string fields. And then this is bar results equals. The problem is this entity is not going to be valid. Let's have a look at what the query offers us. So yeah, if again, if anyone has any extra questions, if you want to know anything about the application, if you want to ask questions, there is also a Discord. So if you want to keep in touch about stuff, you're more than welcome to. I'm happy to chat about this and talk about this a lot. It's a dumb question. If you were trying to like validate data within Kafka, would you want to pull from the consumer or producer API? Validate in what respect? So there's a few ways you can do that. Bug. Visitor. But there is data that isn't being dropped, kind of. Not making it through to the end source. So I guess that depends on how you're considering using Kafka there. So no, it's fine. I'm just going. Sometimes I just have to get the picture. So in this instance, what I do is I send. So let's say I'm on the and will it build? Will the application build? If the application builds, I can kind of demonstrate a little bit. Just as one weak piece, right? Let's start full stack. It builds. Start client. The client original source API. I'll demonstrate the pieces. He says, failed to get configuration from console. Why do you fail to get configuration from console? Console's running. Console's not running. There we go. Let me just configure this. So I'm using console as both service discovery and it's where I find out that I didn't commit something. Configurations, we have ocelot configuration. That's ocelot configure. I think I do it that way. Guess we'll find out in a second. Now we need Kafka configuration. Okay, that should work a little better now. So let's go through the pieces and I'll kind of describe it and then we can determine. It should start. That should be started. Okay. Come on. So this is a critical failure. Restart. Not seen that before. So this is one of the things I've not found in my time using Kafka. So I've been using Kafka since I've been using Kafka for at least 5 or 6 years, right? And I've not met many people who've actually had hands-on experience with Kafka that have any differing opinions to how I'm using it. So I'm going to assume that my usage of Kafka is pretty normal. The way this system works is I have planning is probably the piece I want to focus on for the second. Planning is this project, right? So I have an endpoint, let's say post to planning items. What happens in here is this is from the API, I post a new planning item. It comes in to add planning item. It creates a planning item and saves to the database, right? That actually triggers an event in this system, a domain event, that then ultimately creates a planning item created. And then in here, what I do is I have a publish to Kafka. So I actually have all the information I need in this system for publishing events, right? So if I have, one of the things I made a mistake of when I first started Kafka is I tried to put every piece of information I might need in a Kafka event. But in reality, I didn't need to be doing that, A, because Kafka has message limit sizes. and B, because I actually don't need all the pieces of information for every other system in this piece, right? I just need the information that the planning item cares about. So you'll see there's a lot of these identifiers. I have a differentiator. I have an ID, which is my table ID that is always internal to the system that's using it. So I never expose ID. Identifier is a GUID, still a unique identifier, but it's a GUID that I attach to all objects. So it's a publicly shareable value. Those things I can share around. So I don't need to know about the user information in this event. I just need to know the identifier of the user. That's not for this system to care about. It just needs to know that it's attached. At no point in the planning system do I need to know, oh, it was Bob versus Jim, right? And if there was a need for that, then I'd integrate that data. Thank you for the follow. Web users. So this event publishes here. Wolfie, thank you very much for the follow. Welcome in. So yeah, I'm producing this event from here. So this is the actual Kafka event that gets published out of this part of the system. Let's see if we can start it up and I can demonstrate it a little bit. And again, if I'm not getting to the point, just let me know. Or if I'm explaining something and I'm a little bit too fast. So this system, this application so far uses Kafka and Service Bus. MassTransit with RabbitMQ for Service Bus, because I have two different use cases for them. Why are you breaking on me? Oh, notifications. I don't need notifications right this second. Let's just remove that right this second. So in terms of validation, why do you feel you need to validate the data within Kafka is my first question. What could have gone missing? And are you talking about this scenario where you don't have all the data you need? Which is what I suspect. So let's try loading. Let's try loading this. Come on. It's been a long day. The computer's a little tired, it seems. There we go. So the way this application works is the view is a consolidation of all the data from all the pieces of the system. Users are owned by tenant management. Planning items are owned by planning. Projects are owned by tenant management, right? Because tenant management is kind of like I own the global system. So it's a tenant responsibility of the project. So if I go in here, I can see projects, right? These are owned by the system. These are owned by the system, right? So what happens is when I add a planning item, I don't have the name of the user in the planning system. I just attach an ID, right? And I just realized ads were showing. I should make a notification of that. So I apologize if you were stuck behind ads at all. BDD. So one of the questions I asked was like, what makes you feel you have to validate the data in Kafka? What scenario are you considering? Is it that would miss? What interface is this again? Sorry, I missed that. So this is the application that I'm building, right? So this is the UI for that application. So this is This is an Angular application that is built and it's using GraphQL against the view component of the application to actually pull all this data together. So what's happening is, I'll go back to the diagram. As I enter information in from this client, I'm using the API gateway to distribute the actual commands that I'm sending to the different components. So in this case, if I'm going to add a new planning item in here, right, I say new item. Oh, we need this is not going to work as well as I want. I do not have my topics created. Liquid sky, not planning items. Liquid sky, not planning items, dot changes. We need to create our topics. Right. 10 planning items, changes, attachments. That should actually be enough with those two in there. That's 3. Okay. So if I go in here and if I go into the interface and create a planning item, Magnetonics, welcome in. How are you doing? How's your weekend been? I'll send a planning item to this API, right, via the gateway. It will then publish an integration event. Stop it in real lesson for a bit. Nice. That event is planning item integration event, right? Other systems can consume that event, one of which is the view. The view will consume that event and store the data it needs. Similarly, tenant management might also have published the user information, and the view will have consumed the user information. So between these two systems, the data in this system can now build the actual data and display to me this username, right? So the question I kind of asked was, what makes you think you have to validate the data in Kafka, right? What data would get dropped necessarily? I'm wondering if you are trying to produce too much data into Kafka. Because what will happen is if I go new item and I say a notifications should only publish complete information. The notification system is not waiting for all its data. It's going to produce a message that is incomplete. I'll do that by 07/30/2024. And it's assigned to Jeffrey. And that is notifications UI. Right. We create that. So when we create that, it will land in here because I've got an ID. So example would be that if an extracted data pulled directly from an API has information that isn't making it to the end source, which is flowing through Kafka. So if the end source is a database, that data that lands in the DB isn't matching what is pulled directly at the source system's API. So you have a data discrepancy, or it's out of sequence. Right. So two things there. Where would I experience that the most? Changes is probably one I'd experience that the most because I could actually have multiple events coming from Kafka and they could be completely out of sequence. So in the changes system, I'm using Akka to process through the changes as quickly as I can. So again, let me show you the databases here because there are databases to match up to these components, right? So if we go to planning items, you'll notice that planning items doesn't have users. The view has all the tables, and tenant management has a bunch more tables Kafka messaging outbox and notification outbox, you can ignore them. They are actual support tables, but everything else is its own thing, right? So these are tables to support their needs. If a table exists in two databases with the same name, the thing to remember is there is only one source of truth, right? So planning items is the only source of truth in the entire system for what is the current state of the planning item, right? The tenants, this is the only company, this is the only database in the system that has the valid source of tenants. So so what you have there is the database, the source database published information. Let me make a different drawing here. Create new drawing out, flashbang mode, dark. There you go. So what you have is, let's do this. DB1. And again, we'll split them up by DB. DB3. If you have a widget here that say has a user attached to it, right? And users come from here. Kafka publishes a message there. That doesn't hit this database, right? So when you hit this database, you're expecting the user to be there, and it's not there. Or it was there on the first go, but it's not there on the second go. So now this database, when you look at it, says user Bob when you've just changed this to be user Charlie. Is that the sort of stuff you're talking about, BDD? So that's because there's two concepts here. The first one is data integrity, right? So this data, if you consume this and it has a dependency on another object that comes from another database, right? This should never have this data copied into it. That gets messy. If you're just copying the data into every single database, it gets very messy and very difficult. That is oftentimes it's a good way of getting yourself initially around the challenge of the data could be out of sync, but it does mean that then you're duplicating the data all around the system, making a lot more noise and a lot more weight on the data stores. So all I do here is I have a user ID, right? So that when we insert the widget record into this data store, it's for a user ID. What I do have is that I validate that this exists. And if it doesn't exist yet, I stub that record out so that this record can be stored with all the right IDs and all the right integrity, right? It hasn't gone missing necessarily, but this message might not have actually hit there yet, right? This message might have been failed or whatever. So you have to build this system to be stable. And that's a concept that people don't like in this distributed systems is eventual consistency. Eventually, when this catches up, all this data will be consistent, right? But it might be out of sequence. So it comes down to understanding how would be the best way to access logs to see failures. So that's another challenge. That is, I've got to do a telemetry pass of this application yet, right? Where I'm going to add in extra logging, extra statistics. knowing that a component of the system is unavailable is going to be difficult. I do have health checks in, so when I do deploy this to Kubernetes, I do have the ability. I will have the ability to say, okay, well, this system's actually down. You know, there's alerts and stuff, so monitoring will be there. But I do want to put in open telemetry and put some metrics and analytics in the system. Realistically, you don't. You know, the guarantee to the user is that eventually this will be correct, but it shouldn't be invalid. So one of the things I do in the view side of things, I was kind of covering this, I think, just as you came in, is I have when I capture this is never like create or update, create, insert, delete, etc. It's update planning item because I'm always getting whatever's there and taking the information as it is, whether I create it or update it. I only update it if there's changes, but one of the things this needs to do is it first needs to make sure that it's the users that it was created by and the tenant that it's for actually exist. But for whatever reason, if those components are down, those pieces of data might not be there. But I need this system to be intact, right? One way I could do this is I could actually just store these public identifiers on this record and then kind of do a query on the public identifiers. What I actually do is I actually stub out these other records using what I'm referring to as acquire here. And all this does is again, it's only single machine thread safe, but it is, and this will create a dummy record for the user. So the very worst, this record shows a blank user for a minute or two, while the other system's catching up, or you know, while it's hit a bug, we've seen it restart. It will chew through the queue, right? Because again, you see over here, I have planning items. That's the planning item that I added. Looks like it fired twice. I'm not sure why that fired twice. Interesting. Oh no, for some reason I fired created and updated at the same time. So I track the event source that triggers these things. So from a debugging perspective, looking at Kafka and say, okay, well, the planning item created is what produced this one, but the planning item updated create this one. So for some reason, it updated itself very shortly after. Yeah, they're distinct events. So that's something for me to look at afterwards, right? The changes system didn't. Maybe the changes system is not actually started. Might not be started yet. Should be. But yeah. So I'd say what you want to look at is kind of tooling for telemetry, for knowing that your consumers are unavailable, knowing that you want to be watching things like the lag on these things. Right now, I'm using this is all Dockerized stuff. If I was going to put this into production, I'd probably use something like Confluent Cloud, and they have some very good tools to hook into things like Datadog and stuff to give you alerting on the fact that there's lag. So you'd see lag and you'd know there's going to be some performance problems. But what you want to do is make sure that you're not coding defensively around that sort of stuff. What you're doing is you're building the system that can handle. You don't want to. You never want to just pause and not process messages from Kafka if you don't have all the data, right? You want to get it saved and move on to the next message. So that's why I do that acquire thing, where I don't just um, stuff it all in one record. I actually make it so it's an actual valid schema. So the view here, see that I have planning items, and these have IDs, and these IDs are actually primary keys of these tables, and these are those public identifiers. So if I don't have this tenant record here, when I first get that planning item, I'll create a blank name and create a record, and at the very worst, that data would show as having a blank tenant temporarily. And then I expose views for everything because I actually use GraphQL through the views so I can query everything. So yeah, that's how that's working. Again, there is a Discord if you ever want to ask questions about this sort of stuff. If you want to talk through scenarios, then I'm more than happy to chat about them. Okay. Data flow, drawing, code, system interactions. That's all one is. Okay, that piece is working. The changes piece, I'm not quite sure about why that didn't consume. I don't want to go chasing down all the problems right this second though. Did do it. No. Kafka messaging. So the changes component uses, and one of the things I like about using something like Kafka is I can really embrace this idea that I don't have to use the same data store type for every single component of the system. So changes uses Mongo because I have more flexibility with the schema. I have more ability to change this data without worrying about what's coming. So I can't kind of track the planning items as they come through, and I produce an outbot. This is the outbots for Kafka of events that should fire. It looks like it didn't determine that that's changed in any way. So that's for me to worry about later. And actually, on that topic, you didn't even get stored in there. So that's another challenge. It didn't error, but didn't succeed either. So, well, I'm building what I'm, building this evening. Kafka call that's why is I'm trying to figure out the whole. If I don't have data on the other side, right? I need to populate it when I first bring the system online, right? I can't use the integration events to publish the system. Otherwise, I'm going to end up in a big mess of, well, you know, it's kind of broken. It's just dynamic. Shannon, how are you? Well, as well for me, I think. Select. So this would be select select actually fields dot join that. Does that not work? Oh, no, that should work, right? Yeah, that's not what that's for. I'm mixing languages. Fixing and bugging my Blazor interrupt generator. There's not like fancy TypeScript types. From table name. So this is just a straight up dump. String. Oh, I know what it is. String dot join fields. That's why. Not so much fancy. C# does not the concept of a void type to a generic. under the concept of a void type to a generic. Okay. Mm-hmm. Why would you do that? You could do that in TypeScript. So know what I choose to make it. List object makes it all. Gotcha. Yeah. Just make it any, it'll be fine. Fine. Okay. So then that's just return, isn't it? I should make a void object, which I might be more explicit, I suppose, from a declaration perspective. I'll work that way. Okay. I was thinking just that too, yeah. Hmm. Sorry, I'm actually kind of I'm not committed to this at all. So I'm looking to build a tool to be able to say, okay, this data, I want to kind of create a script in each component, right? So this script might live in, say, planning in notifications, because the table data that I need to build, if notifications is reconstructed, notifications doesn't have many tables that I would want to back up. I don't want to waste the storage. I don't want to make sure that I don't want to risk having out of sync data. So the notification system would only really want to um, there you go. You've been here all the time. Okay, fair enough. So you know that I don't like this idea. I just don't know if I want to commit to this problem. Like, do I want to go and find another tool to do it and learn how to use their library, or do I want to build my own? It's a lot of work to do. It could take Mojo up on his offer, but that's a then I've kind of put a demand on somebody else, and that's not really solid. 'Cause it can be a generic tool with one use case right this second. Like I said, there are libraries, but I don't like the way that they function. To me, it feels like something I should be able to define, and all the other examples use code to define it. But it feels like it should be genericizable. So I think I'm I'm scared of committing the energy to it, but I know I need it. I kind of need it now because I want to populate the data without writing weird scripts. Yeah. So Chinchu, Cho ETL, that uses code. ETL process, that uses code. Cross applies zip. That I mean that does a lot more. List all required files, extract zip files from zip. That's a more fluent declaration thing that allows you to combine several data files so you can use it as a little bit more. But again, it's all code. Uh, you know, I suppose I don't need .NET ETL tools. I just need ETL tools, but ETL bots is a paid product. If you make changes, you have to update it someplace. If you manage it, it might be easy to enhance in the future and roll out. Yeah, because I mean, it is an ongoing need, right? New systems, new recovered system. I keep thinking to the recovered system, but it's actually if I want to bring up, let's say I wanted to bring up Snowflake, right? How do I do that? I need to be able to transform the data out of my system into an output format to be able to feed it in. You can hook up Kafka to Snowflake, so that's actually an option. You can basically make Kafka Snowflake a consumer of Kafka, but that might not be a viable option, right? Because again, um, maybe I don't want all the data to be consumed. That's what KSQL DB is for. Or Kafka Streams is more pertinent for that piece. Yeah. So now I'm in the, am I running away with something I don't need to solve right now? Am I overcomplicating this? Am I procrastinating on solving a really hard problem? But you are right. If I manage it, I have the ability to enhance and roll out. And I could build a very simple version right now based around my need of I just need to populate data into these tables to start with so they don't all start off dumb and empty. Let's see if we can at least get it working a little bit. I've got a little while. Not that much time. Because I mean, ultimately this is var reader equals new read repository of definition dot source. Let's try and make this really dumb. Write repository. Public abstract class repository string string disposable. Those two things don't change. The only thing that changes DB connection is the fact that it is that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Oh, that's why. You need to pass down the parameters for the class right repository string connection string repository connection string. So this would be using var writer equals new write repository definition dot destination. Okay, SQL to SQL might be a little simpler than I'm thinking. Public void write all. Again, this is really bad. From a performance perspective, but I suppose it doesn't really matter right now, does it? Because I'm about to dump everything into one big object and then yeah. So this is going to be not even going to go into what I was about to write there. Insert into table name. String.join fields. This is probably better. Var what do I like about that? Why am I breaking? Insert table name. Why you? What? I don't get it. Why am I breaking there? Can you not put parentheses inside of these things? Doesn't make sense. Okay. And then, so what we do then is you're going to do for each var record and data, var accessor equals record as I dictionary object string object. Then so what I was thinking of doing is because you can use because it's a dynamic object, I can get it as a dictionary. For each var property, accessor dot values dot builder dot append line. String dot join accessor dot values. I don't think that's going to work quite the way I expect it to work, but what's the worst that happens? That's that. Not sure what that wrote before, but we'll find out afterwards. You're actually going to complain about expression expected there. No, you're not. You're just going to resharper. Oh, writers confusing me. And then we're going to do db connection dot use dapper. Let's not try it. Let's not try and be clever. As we try and insert all these records. Okay, so this should become write all definition Oh, no. For each var step in definition dot steps dot pipeline. Writer dot write all step dot destination dot data equals reader dot fetch all step dot source dot table step dot source dot fields to array. Probably you need to refactor that. Writer dot write all step dot destination dot table step dot destination dot fields data. I think I've just determined that I can pass in step to array, right? Not bad. Did it do anything is the question. I doubt it did anything because it would have needed to. Yeah. So the problem there is it's not going to escape that. So it's not quite so clever as being. SQL query. Yeah, it needs to know. It would need to know the type because I need to quote what strings and yeah, it's not quite as simple as doing this. So the data, each piece of data would need to be prepared. So I need to know what an object is. It can't just be a simple case of just concatenating these things. So it is way more involved. But I mean, that's kind of the idea, right? For each step, it would do the query and then the insert. But again, you get into bulk inserts. Maybe I can stream from one into the other so that I don't have to take the cost of loading an entire data set into memory and then dumping it back out. There's going to be optimizations there that need to be done. So yeah. But anyway, that is for tomorrow. So I'm going to continue working on this a little bit more, try and get this working. But then I'm going to have to tackle this concept. And I think ultimately, right this second, I'm basically going to say, okay, well, I need to create some sort of outbox or some sort of queue because this system coming around to that data idempotency, not idempotency plus data integrity that BDD brought up before. This system has to have that data intact to be able to perform its job. It can't be producing notifications but not have the users to notify. So I'm going to have to create some sort of outbox here that not only reacts to changes in the system, because again, if I'm saying, hey, wait for this user, maybe I can start a saga that is this. Do I have all the data for this thing? No, I don't. Okay. Watch for these things, right? I need to have all this intact. So if I start a saga, as those things occur, they can trigger. So let's say I need users and I need a tenant, and I need an attachment, and I need all the information for those things. Start a saga that says, okay, well, let's delay sending this until all these things, so this becomes a saga, and we start that process. That might be over engineering. That might be way more complicated, but I'm trying to think through options of saying, okay, to achieve what I need here, I need to have this information. And I don't see any benefit in moving that. That demand remains the same no matter where I put it in the system, right? If I say, okay, well, the communications can handle this part, that demand just shifts to the communications. I can't accurately represent a message to the user until I have that information. So if notifications is collecting the pieces of information they need to create notifications effectively, then that's the job of this piece. So yeah, this is going to become quite a complicated component of the system, but it will be worthwhile in the end. So, yeah. Okay. So I'm going to raid out. I've almost done 3 hours again. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for hanging out, Mr. Anhorn. Appreciate it. As always. And yeah, if you are interested in talking more about this stuff, you want to interact, the Discord is there. If you would like to join, you're more than welcome to. Up to the Discord and sub to YouTube. Thanks for the stream. Looking forward to that. Thank you for coming out, BDD. Mr. Jones, thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming and hanging out for a bit. Appreciate it. I know it's late there for you. Yeah. And Trap, hello. How are you doing? I was in your stream earlier. I was lurking in your stream. Yeah. So I'm going to read over to Satellites. First streamer that I know is up because I've got him up on my screen, and we'll return tomorrow for some more of this. So thank you very much. Take care. Have a great rest of your day, and see you soon. The end. I will have a stream deck this week again set up for this machine. Awesome.